This week marks the 1 year since the conflict in Europe started. With me are two important diplomats, the top diplomat of European Union and Ukraine here in Delhi, Ambassador of EU and the CDA of Ukraine. Welcome to WION. My first question to you, starting with you, sir, is that how do you see the situation changing in terms of the security challenges for Europe since the conflict that started last year? How has it been a worry for European capitals?
Well, as you say, unfortunately, we are about to mark a very sad anniversary. 1 year of conflict, 1 year of aggression from Russia towards its peaceful neighbor. It's a major concern, this return of war in Europe, and it's a major concern to see a blatant violation of the UN Charter by a very member of the UN Security Council. What we have tried to do as European Union is to react to this affront, to this challenge against the rules-based system of international governance by supporting Ukraine, isolating Russia politically, and sanctioning Russia in economic terms in order to make it difficult for the Russian leadership to continue this war of aggression. And making those responsible for the aggression accountable as well. That has been the purpose of a repeated series of sanctions. We are about to discuss the 10th package of sanctions. In parallel, we have been trying to support Ukraine as much as we could in political and economic terms, but also militarily in providing supplies, weapon supplies. It's actually the first time in the history of the European Union that the European Union has also supplied weapons through its budget. It's the first time, and it's a reflection of how extraordinary the situation is. And such an extraordinary situation warrants extraordinary measures.
Sir, coming to you, if you can talk about the situation on the ground 1 year since the conflict started. The situation, of course, has created a lot of refugees who are now going to Europe. So if you can also detail the refugee crisis because of the ongoing conflict.
In this regard, I would like to say that definitely Ukraine is facing now a big and terrible troubles. Definitely, we have quite a lot of difficulties. Among of them, as you mentioned, this is a refugee crisis. People, Ukrainian people, they did not want to leave their houses. They did not want to leave their native land. But unprovoked Russian war made that people, innocent people, put them in such kind of difficulties and such situation that they had to leave the country. We have, among of the refugee crisis, we have quite a lot of problem with the Russian war in our territory. The new year for our nationals, for our country, started not from the 1st of January. It started from 21st of February, when unprovoked attack of Russian Federation happened in the morning, early morning. And in this case, we, as a brave nation, with the support of our partners, our peace-loving countries who are supporting Ukraine, with the European Union, with United States of America, with all partnering countries, we are fighting for democracy, we are fighting for freedom. Because for us, for Ukrainians, democracy and freedom, this is priceless.
So do you see or do you think that there will be increased conflict or actions by the Russians ahead of the anniversary, which will be marked on Friday? Do you see they bombing Ukrainian cities?
Look, we have the Russian missiles, bombardment, shelling, it's every day. And also it is a countless amount of missiles which had been sent to our territory. And we are living, actually, this is a nowadays, this is a style of life when people are living under the air alarm. And definitely, we are expecting every day the air missile attack, and we are ready. We are ready. In this case, we requested our partners to provide us with more air defense system to be on the more safe side. And definitely, European Union, US, and our partners are doing their best to provide us with the support. Because we are fighting for freedom, we are fighting for human values, we are fighting for democracy. And everybody understands that the war in the territory of our country and Ukraine is defending right now quite a lot of peaceful nations.
Sir, you talked about the sanctions, the measures which European Union has taken against Russia. Has it had an impact on Vladimir Putin, the Russian president? Do you see some kind of indication that it's impacting their economy? Because the Russians have been saying that for them, the focus now is Asia, countries like China and India, and they have increased their energy output to these countries. So do you see your sanctions having an impact on Vladimir Putin?
Yes, we do. We do see sanctions having an impact on the Russian economy. There are a number of indicators, be it the capital market, be it in terms of the GDP figures. And we also see how difficult it has become for Russia to have access to technology, which is key for the very survival of the Indian industry. So we do see indeed the impact of the sanctions, including the success of the price cap on oil, for instance. And in the medium to long term, the fact that Russia will no longer be able to export oil and gas towards Europe will be a very key challenge for the Russian economy to address. So we do, in short, we do see the effect of sanctions. Sanctions are biting, and we believe that they will have also an impact on the capability of Russia to continue to supply its armed forces in this unjustified war of aggression.
And how do you see the visit of the American President Joe Biden? It was a surprise visit, and a visit that has been an international headline for the last 24 hours. So do you see the presence of President Biden in Kyiv a very, very important message?
I think it is. I think it's additional evidence of the determination and unity of the United States and Europe and the allies and partners in supporting Ukraine. We stand by Ukraine.
So coming to you, the Russian side has been for a long time saying that the entire conflict started because Ukraine wanted to join NATO. It still is pending, it's still in process. But what do you like to say on these Russian claims?
Look, when Russia started arguing that they initiated war, so-called special military operation, to demilitarize our country because they did not want to see the NATO presentation in our territory. But Ukraine, before did not announce that definitely we had some wishes to join NATO, but we did not announce it, and we were so far of the NATO representation of our country, and I think so. That's why we are calling this war as unprovoked, and definitely that Russian war, the year anniversary showed that our nation is very brave. We can fight. We are fighting with the NATO standards. We have training classes of our armed forces with NATO. But before, we were not the member of NATO, but after the Russian war and Russian aggression, they wanted to demilitarize, but what they got? They got the Ukrainian application to obtain the NATO membership. In this case, yeah, I think so that it was not true. That they arguing they did not want that NATO military bases to be deployed on the land of Ukraine. But we did not have the NATO bases in our country at all before.
But how is Europe today helping your country in terms of your security, in terms of your capacity when it comes to defense? We have seen reports of how tanks will be supplied and other details. If you can talk about that in detail.
Europe is supporting us quite a lot, and the European support is continuing every day. We are getting quite a lot of ammunition, weaponry, artillery, hard weapons, armored machine, tanks, and we are very much thankful. And without the support, valuable support of EU, I think so to win this war, it will be very much difficult.
So coming back to you, how do you see India's role in the resolution of the conflict? Because Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that this is not an era of war, and India this year is the president of the G20 grouping. So how do you see Indian role in terms of perhaps pacifying the situation?
Well, India's voice is very influential, and that's why the statement by Prime Minister Modi was so important about the fact that it is not an era of war. And we have seen India providing humanitarian aid to Ukraine and helping in the definition of the arrangement which allows the export of grain via the Black Sea. So I think India is already playing an important role, and we definitely count on India to exert all its influence to help in stopping this conflict. We are not living in a business as usual situation. We have a return of war. We have an aggression, we have a violation of international law of the UN Charter. This inevitably will also have an impact on the G20 proceedings. But what we trust that the Indian presidency will be able to conduct the G20 towards a successful conclusion, while recognizing the situation is indeed very complex, and we have a situation in Europe where a member of the UN Security Council has aggressed its peaceful neighbor.
Also, we know that this month at the UN, several resolutions are expected to be taken. Have you reached out to New Delhi seeking support?
Well, we have a constant conversation with India as a friend and a partner, including on proceedings at the UN General Assembly.
And do you expect India is going to support your stance?
Well, we shall see. Huh?
Yeah. Sir, coming to you on the similar India question, how do you see India's role? Because when it comes to India's role, your foreign minister hasn't been very kind regarding India increasing its imports from Russia of energy.
India's role is very crucial, I think so. We consider India as a global leader, the leader of the global South as well. We can take into the account the presidency of India in G20. There are a lot of important events are planned in the framework of the presidency. And we hope so that the leitmotif of Indian presidency in G20, one Earth, one family, one future, will work properly, successfully. And definitely we count on India's support during the presidency of India in G20. And we also think that the words of Honorable Prime Minister of India will definitely have a quite strong effect to deliver to the Russian Federation that this is not era of war. And we hope so that we can utilize this opportunity, the Indian presidency in G20, and definitely we see as a window of opportunity to restore peace and to stop war in our country.
So, in last 1 year, what kind of engagement you have had with the Indian counterparts regarding the conflict? Yes, Ukraine played an important role when it comes to the evacuation of the Indian students. That has been an issue, and both sides have been engaging on. But on resolution of the conflict, what kind of engagement you have had with the Indian side?
We are in regular contacts, high-level contacts. We are discussing, we are informing Indian side what is going on regarding the situation in our country. Definitely, we are receiving the humanitarian aid from the Indian government and from the private business of India. We are very much thankful. Definitely, India is a country which is the leader also of non-aligned movement. It means that non-aligned movement, and this is a peace. And in this case, we think so that India will take a leadership. For example, we are also invited Indian side to participate in the peace formula, which initiated by our president. We also consider India as a country which can also be a part of warranty of security. In this case, in this regard, we are in a close touch with Indian government regarding the issue of stopping war.
Now on to the global impact of the war. Very obvious inflationary pressure on the global south, and of course we have seen disruption in supply. So if you can detail as to how the conflict has impacted the global south, there must be conversation, and what Europe is planning to do to reduce those pressures.
Well, the first thing I would like to underline is that the pressure on the price of food and energy is entirely the result of the Russian aggression, and largely also the product of a deliberate choice of the Russian Federation to try to disrupt the world markets. What the European Union has been trying to do is to mitigate this impact, particularly on the most vulnerable countries of the south of the world. We have done so through several initiatives, by helping the export of grain from Ukraine, creating what we call the solidarity lanes, by supporting the initiative in the Black Sea, again, to help in the export of grain. Through the price cap on oil, the point about the price cap is about stabilizing the price on world markets of oil. And I'm glad to note that it has been working. Because we no longer see the spikes in the prices of oil that we assisted to earlier during the conflict. And we are constantly discussing, particularly with our neighbors in Africa, to see how best we can try to support and to address the challenges. Challenges, let me repeat again, entirely due to a deliberate choice of Russia with the aggression, and then through the destabilization, through the weaponization of energy and food. Let me be very blunt here, because I'd like to stress that there are no sanctions on grains or fertilizers. So the inflation on the price of food is entirely due to the Russian aggression.
You mentioned about price cap. India has not participated in the price cap. So what's your view on that?
No, the point is about having the price cap exercising a positive influence of stability on the world markets. And that's what's happening. It's an initiative with very clear practical implication, and it's working.
So coming to you, President Zelensky's hopes from India, what are they in terms of the Indian role? I've asked this question, but I'm asking in the perspective of President Zelensky because he's spoken to the Indian Prime Minister several times now.
Yeah, definitely. As I told you before, that we very much count on Indian support. We are in a close touch with the Indian government on the highest level. First of all, our president wants to welcome Honorable Prime Minister of India in our land, in Ukraine, to follow the example of the world leaders from the peace-loving countries and to evaluate on his own eyes what happened and how many damages Russia brought to our land. And it will be very clear picture. And definitely we count on the leadership of Mr. Modi as a world leader. We believe that his capacity, his reputation will play a crucial role to stop the Russian war.
So you mentioned about the invitation. So has an official invitation extended by President Zelensky that Prime Minister Modi should come to Kyiv? And when, if you can talk about when was this invitation extended?
We are expecting the Honorable Prime Minister even today.
Okay, it's very optimistic. Let's hope if it happens. But my last question to you, because we're running out of the time. The conflict in Europe is something that has been dominating the global headlines for last 1 year. It's one of the biggest tragedies to unfold in our era. But there is also worry regarding China as well in this part of the world, especially for India, where in the northern borders we have seen China not respecting sovereignty of India and similar cases across the Indo-Pacific. So my question to both of you, let me start with you, sir. How do you see the Chinese actions, and will you also condemn, like you have been condemning Russia over the conflict or that country not respecting sovereignty?
Well, if I may, let me put it differently. I mean, the vision of the European Union about international relation is a vision underpinned by respect for international law, a rules-based system of international governance, respect for the principles and values that underpin the UN Charter. So that's our vision, and that's the approach we implement in the full spectrum of our relations.
And so your reply to
I have the same position.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And of course, we know that this week is very crucial in every sense possible. And then, of course, the Indian presidency as well, with the focus, of course, will be many things, including the impact of the conflict, something we have discussed.